We got 7 different news stories from 7 different outlets, guys. It's time for another episode of Regan's Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with 7 different articles from 7 different outlets, and we're going to dive straight into it, guys. Just before we do, just one little caveat. If you guys haven't noticed, I haven't been feeling well lately. If you haven't read my community post, I've said that already. So that explains why I'm a little bit more wrapped up than usual. I do have water beside me to keep me going, so hopefully I won't be spending too much time coughing, wheezing, and all that stuff. So, right off the bat. First one here, guys, is an exclusive from The Guardian with the headline that the Thames Water pumped at least 72 billion litres of sewage into the Thames since 2020. So 72 billion litres in the past 3 years, which is an insane amount of sewage, to say the least. But the exclusive also says that the Lib Dems call for water companies to be more transparent with their data on sewage spills. Well, they're not going to be transparent, especially since, since 2020, so that's pretty much since we've left the year, the end of the transition period. It's quite absolutely disgusting, to say the least. And we have an environment secretary who really doesn't give a damn about it, really. A government that really doesn't care. There's a lot of angry people writing to their constituents, especially those who can't go into the beaches and that. Obviously, right now the weather's not exactly in the best of places, but still, to say the least, it's just more misery for people. It really, really is. And these companies are just making making a record deal of profit as well, because the other thing is, it's obviously costs money to process all the sewage, obviously. So it's just cheaper for them to just dump it, which is what they're doing, and it needs to be stopped. So Thames Water has pumped at least 72 billion litres of sewage into the River Thames since 2020, roughly equaling to 29,000 Olympic swimming pools, new figures have revealed. Water firms have no legal obligation to report the amount of sewage discharged, only the number of hours that it was released. But campaigners argue this data is insignificant and it does not properly qualify how much sewage is in England's rivers. Just bear in mind as well, this is not applies to Scotland, because Scotland actually look after their waters, and I'm pretty sure they can correct me if I'm wrong in the live chat or in the comments down below, but I'm pretty sure they're publicly owned. The data was revealed by an environmental information request submitted by the Liberal Democrats, who are calling for water companies to be more transparent with their data on sewage spills. In most areas there are not volume measuring devices, but Thames Water use sewage monitors to measure volumes in some locations. The water company uses them while making the Thames tideway, and they are the only known monitors of the kind fitted in the country, because they do not cover the entire network. It is likely far more sewage than released than that measured. Last year, at least 14.3 billion litres of sewage was discharged into the Thames, and the worst year was 2021, when at least 32 billion litres was released. 32 billion. Wow. They just let it all out, didn't they? Sorry if you're eating. Morgan near Twickenham is the worst affected site, where 17.1 billion litres of sewage was discharged into the river. The area contains a natural reserve, rare wildlife, and areas where people swim and boat. This was closely followed by Crossness in East London, where 15.8 billion of litres of sewage was spilled. Miranda Wilson, Liberal Democrat MP for Twickenham, has said Thames Water should be disbanded and replaced by a public good company with a board populated by environmentalists that would not be allowed to prioritise profit over the environment. And we both know how the Conservatives, let's say we know what Conservatives feel about state-owned. They want everything privatised, don't they? She said, "These horrifying revelations are proof that the Thames Water needs to be ripped up. It is outrageous that the Conservative ministers continue to sit on their hands and let Thames Water get away with this. The government is standing idly by whilst our rivers are poisoned and water firms exceed pocket millions. The era of water firms putting profit before environment must come to an end. These water firms are committing environmental crimes which are destroying our rivers and wildlife habitats, all while pocketing eye-watering sums of money. Prosecutions of Thames Water by the Environment Agency for pollution incidents have led to fines of $35.7 million between 2017 and 2023 earlier this year. Thames Water was fined $3.3 million after it killed more than 1,400 fish by discharging millions of litres of untreated sewage into the rivers. The company admitted 4 charges in an Environment Agency prosecution. And these charges don't really hurt them that much, to be fair, either. They just probably end up adding it to the debts they're on. Wilson added that water firms should be monitoring the volume of sewage, not just the length of time of which it is discharged. What is most shocking is that this is just the tip of the iceberg, she said. That's even scary. So we don't even know the full extent. We don't know the full extent, guys. That's even worse. With almost every sewage monitor unable to measure the litres of sewage discharged, this figure is likely to enter the trillions. Water firms are fitting monitors which simply aren't up to the job and hide the true horrors of their filthy sewage habits. The government should force Thames Water to install new monitors which measure the volume of sewage discharged so we can find the areas which need saving the most from this awful act. A Thames Water spokesperson said, "Our EDM, that's event duration monitoring equipment, cannot measure volumes which were not designed to do so. With respect to the duration of sewage discharge, near real-time data is published for each of our 468 permitted discharge locations. This data gives the number and duration of discharge via our dedicated website. At a limited number of sites relating to Tideway Tunnel, we have the ability to calculate volume discharge. However, we do not do this on a regular basis across our sites. Of course, what matters most is stopping the need for the discharges, and we have published plans to upgrade over 250 of our sewage treatment works and sewers." Yeah, you have plans, but how much of these are you actually going to put into effect? I think is the question people will be asking, guys. How much of that are they actually going to put into? Are they actually going to put into it? I think is the question. And my answer is I don't think they do. I think it's just kind of like kicking, a bit like the Conservative government, kicking the can down the road, kind of like just letting it truckle along, really, because they don't seem to care whatsoever about this whatsoever. I just feel like they're just kind of just letting it go on and on, really. And like I said, we have an Environment Secretary who's not taking any action on it either, guys, which is also another issue. So we're going to move on. The next one is from Sky News, guys. Interesting one to say the least. So you guys remember there was the story about Nigel Farage and the row about that whole banking row nonsense, guys. You guys remember all that crap, don't you? Well, Dame Alison Rose, the former NatWest boss, loses $7.6 million over the Nigel Farage debanking row. Oh God, this is just going to be an odd one, that's to say the least, guys. So what is this about? So the former NatWest boss, Dame Alison Rose, is to lose £7.6 million of her potential payoff as the taxpayer-backed lender seeks to draw a line under the debanking row sparked by the closure of Nigel Farage's Coutts account. Confirming Sky News' revelation on Friday morning, NatWest said in a statement to the London Stock Exchange that Dame Alison would still receive payments totaling in the region of $3.2 million prior to the end of her 12-month notice period. Dame Alison stepped down in late July after admitting that she had discussed the former UKIP leader banking arrangements with a BBC journalist. This week, the Information Commissioner Office was forced to make a grovelling apology to Dame Alison after it claimed she had broken privacy laws, which prompted furious response from Nigel Farage. It emerged following a subject access request by Nigel Farage that NatWest employees had belittled the broadcaster and former politician, making a stem of pre-adjured comments about his views and finances. Last month, the bank apologised to Mr Farage, acknowledging that it had been guilty of serious failings in the way it had treated him. The decision to debank Mr Farage has sparked a firestorm in Westminster and forced the city's watchdog into an urgent review of the practices across Britain's banking sector. In a statement on Friday, NatWest said Dame Alison would forfeit the uninvested shares awards to the 4.7 million at Thursday's closing share price. She would also relinquish variable pay from her work in 2023, which she could have been worth up to 2.9 million, meaning the overall pay award she will forego amounts to 7.6 million. NatWest says its former boss would receive 1.75 million in base salary. Fixed shared award and pension entitlements between now and next July, added to around £650,000 she has received since her exit. In addition to that, 2.4 million a share award, which is worth at NatWest's current stock price around £800,000, will vest during Dame Alison's notice period next spring. The bank said no finding of misconduct had been made against Dame Alison. Responding, Dame Alison said, "I am pleased that NatWest Group has confirmed that no findings of misconduct have been made against me. I can also confirm acceptance of the terms of the settlement agreement, which is in line with NatWest Group remuneration policy, bringing the matter to a close." Man, these banks throw so much money around, don't they? They get so much money. And this kind of really just been blown up really because of Nigel Farage. Really, it all started with him. But I to me, it's like the payoff that she was potentially getting. Like, what? Like, why do you give them so much money? Do you need to give them so much money? Like, oh no, she's going to look £7.6 million. God help us all. I mean, it's just like, really? Is that really like? I just think it's kind of like quite grovelling that, you know, people talk about Nigel Farage behind their back, but because NatWest were talking about it and kind of got swung in, it's all of a sudden they were like grovelling apology and yeah, it's a bit of a hogwash of a story if I'm honest, guys. But it's just one I wanted to put out there for you guys anyway, to say the least. So I hope you found it interesting, nonetheless. Almost missed a story last week. I missed one last week, didn't I? So you guys know how crap my knowledge is when it comes to economy stuff, but I thought this one is kind of interesting to say the least. I do apologise again for my not feeling absolutely great, but here we go. This one's from the BBC, guys, with the headline that the UK economy flatlines as the higher interest rates bite. Yeah, not good. So the UK failed to grow between July and September, the figures show, after a succession of interest rate rises. The performance was slightly better than expected, as many analysts had expected it to shrink, but forecasters suggest that the economy is set to be stagnant for several months yet. Last week, the Bank of England said the UK economy was likely to see zero growth until 2025, although it's expected to avoid a recession. Up until September, the Bank of England have raised interest rates 14 times in a row to try and tame the soaring price rises. However, some raising rates can reduce inflation. The pace at which price rise also affects economic growth by making it more expensive for consumers and businesses to borrow money. Interest rates are at a 15-year high of 5.25% and are expected to remain high for some time. Bank Governor Andrew Bailey said last week it was much too early to be considered a rate cut. Paul Dellis, the chief UK economist at the Capital Economics, said the latest data suggested the drag from higher interest rates is growing, but he does not expect the bank to start cutting rates until late next year. The Office for National Statistics, the ONS, said the latest growth figures showed a subdued picture across all sectors of the economy. The service sector saw a small decline over the 3-month period, while manufacturing and the construction sector recorded marginal growth. The Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said despite the lack of growth, the economy was in better shape than many economics were predicting last year. A year ago, the Office for Budget Responsibility said the first part of this year the economy would shrink by more than 1%. In fact, it's grown. The British economy is much more resilient than many people predicted. Of course, there's an impact as we bring down inflation. As we start to win the battle against inflation, we will be taking measures to unlock the long-term potential of the economy. However, Labour's shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves said the latest figures were further evidence that the economy is not working, while Liberal Democrat Treasury spokesperson Sarah Everard said the Conservatives had delivered a hammer blow to the economy, leading us down to a no-growth path. So I'm just going to switch cameras here just so you can have a look at this, guys. So this graph here, this is the UK's economy growth remains weak. Quarterly GDP growth to the UK. This is sources from the Office of National Statistics. So pretty much 2021 we were, the growth is kind of, obviously the 7.3% growth is obviously from the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, obviously because during that time we were in lockdown. But as you can see, since then we have had some bits of growth. 2022 was absolutely horrible. We went back into negative, and we really haven't really, not the numbers I would say anywhere near the numbers since a few years ago. That's for sure. So that's where we're kind of at right now in terms of the numbers. Although the rate rises from the banks are flattening growth, the government may feel a small amount of relief that the risk of a formal technical recession defined as two consecutive 3-month period of the economy shrinking has been lowered. But Prime Minister Rishi Sunak vowed to grow the economy is very much in the balance. Even between July and September, there was a tiny contraction in the economy, though it rounded down to 0.0%. The growth forecast for the final 3 months of the year is between 0 and 0.1%, in line with other major European countries, which are also weighed down by rising rates. The Bank of England may feel it has started to engineer a softish landing from last year's excessive inflation. The government will too point to next week's likely significant fall in the headline rate of inflation, when the figure is forecast to slow from 6.7% to around 4.8% for October. It may declare victory on that target on Wednesday, even if its growth targets is now under question. This may change the backdrop to the autumn statement later this month, and if it continues for general election too, as it challenges the clear desire for Downing Street to paint a turnaround picture. As the inflation problem eases, the growth problems become more prominent. Dominic Boone, Finance Director of gift supplier Fizz Creation in Lancing, West Sussex, said it's been a particularly tough year. The company is coming into the key Christmas period where it makes the most of its money, and Mr. Boone has noticed consumer confidence dropping. People are struggling with interest rates on their mortgage, on their cars, the cost of living, heating, gas, electricity, everything is costing more. They have less money in their pockets. Down the road is Lucy Lago, who runs her cafe inside Lacing Business Park. I see people have definitely stopped eating breakfast, she said, and their spend per head is obviously going slightly lower. People are being very careful what they buy. Gross domestic product, that's GDP, figures shows the health of the UK economy is a measure or an attempt to measure all the activities of companies, governments and individuals in a country. If the figure is increasing, it means the economy is growing and people are doing more work and usually getting a little bit richer on average. But if the GDP is falling and then the economy is shrinking, it can be bad news for business. The zero growth in GDP in the July to September period follows a 0.2% expansion on the previous 3 months. The ONS data also shows the economy grew by 0.2% in September alone compared with the previous month, which is stronger than expected. Darren Morgan of the ONS told the BBC Today programme that while the latest data shows a very flat picture overall, there were signs of improvement. For example, more than half of businesses were not considering raising their prices in November 2023. The highest proportion of business to tell us that was first introduced that question in April 2022, he said. So, yeah, inflation. So obviously the GDP, the economy, pretty stagnated really, as the government are trying to tackle inflation. Of course, that's kind of why bringing down the inflation. But many people have predicted that it would go down, the interest rates. Excuse me, but still haven't seen that real change, guys. And obviously, I still just look back on the impact of Brexit. There's still long-term damages and repercussions that we have from that. The war in Ukraine is definitely having supplies. There are global issues. There's no question that there are global issues, because global factors are taking into place right now as well. Even China, I've seen that China is struggling economic wise as well. And America's plans to kind of tighten its own borders and its own stuff within its own country as well is also hampering the world economy. So these factors, there are world factors into play when it comes to it, but domestically, more needs to be done from our point of view. But you need to encourage people for sure when it comes to driving more people to work. But we need to, prices are not so much, you can't really stop bringing down the prices is hard enough, but at least you need to slow down the increase in prices, or at least try to freeze it, because it is becoming harder and harder out there for people to make ends meet, as it is, because of the cost of living and whatnot out there. So that is for sure. I've got one more article, but then we'll take a little bit of a mini break here for you guys. If you can, hit the like button, be greatly appreciated. Share this across social media. If you hit the bell notification icon, you'll be notified of when I go live. Also, if you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button. Will be really greatly appreciated. This next one is from the iNews, and I really like this one, guys. So, Prince Harry's privacy claim against the Daily Mail publisher can go to the High Court trial. The judge has rules. The judge, I say rules judge. I was going to say the judge has ruled. Sir Elton John and Baroness Doreen Lawson will also be allowed to proceed with their cases against Associated News Limited, the ANL. They're coming. We've spoken about this quite a while ago, guys, about how a bunch of celebrities are coming together to try and take on some of the Associated Press, and rightly so. And this is some really good news. I'm very happy about this. So, Prince Harry has won a bid to take his privacy claim against the publisher of the Daily Mail to the High Court trial. Mr. Justin Nicotine, who gave his decision in writing on Friday, said ANL had not been able to deliver a knockout blow to the claims of any of these claimants. Sir Elton John and Baroness Doreen Lawson will also be allowed to proceed with their cases against Associated News Limited. Associated newspapers have strongly denied the allegations. 7 people, including David Furnish, Sadine Frost, Liz Hurley and Sir Simon Hughes, have also brought legal action against ANL. They have accused the publisher of allegedly carrying out or commissioning unlawful activities such as hiring private investigators to place listening devices inside cars, blagging private records and accessing and recording private phone conversations. The Duke claimed he was largely deprived of important parts of his teenage years due to suspicion and paranoia caused by the publication of unlawful articles. In a document filed on Prince Harry's behalf, Barrister David Sherbrone said, "Friends were lost or cut off as a result, and everyone became a suspect since he was misled by the way the articles were written into believing that those close to him were the source of his information and being provided to Associated newspapers." ANL has firmly denied the allegations, and in March the publisher asked a judge to rule in his favour without a trial, arguing the legal challenge against it were brought far too late. Adrian Camry KC, representing ANL, said the high-profile individual could have used reasonable due diligence to discover if their potential claim before October 2016. For me, just before we go any further, I just want to make a point on this. It kind of really grinds my gears that because of so much time passing, basically they're saying, "Oh well, it's kind of a bit late now for them to make a claim," and I'm just like, they have a right to know what the hell you guys have been doing, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, and I just find this so infuriating that there's a threshold. And then after that threshold, they can kind of try and get away with it. It's pretty darn disgusting. Yeah, we need media reform. That is for sure, guys. Media reform is something we are desperately needing. The lawyer said the legal action against it had no real prospects of succeeding and is barred under a legal period of limitation. Lawyers for the celebrities and the high-profile individuals said they were thrown off the scent and were not aware of being targeted, having believed categorical denials from ANLs over any involvement in unlawful activity. Six of those bringing cases against the publisher have referred to alleged confessions by private investigator Gavin Burrows in their claims, but ANL highlighted a later contrasting witness statement from Mr. Burrows in which he denies being commissioned by its newspaper to conduct unlawful information gathering. Prince Harry made a surprise appearance at the Royal Court of Justice during the 4-day hearing in March. Senator Elton, Miss Frost and Lady Lawrence also appeared in London courts at the time during the preliminary hearing. The Duke has been involved in 6 legal battles at the High Courts in recent months, including cases brought against the Mirror Group newspapers, the MGM, and News Group newspapers, the NGM. His civil litigations also include legal challenges against the Home Office linked to his provision of his personal security. The story has since been updated. This is I'm glad they won. Can go to the High Court. I'm very happy about this, guys, and I really hope that that they really do get them. I really hope they get these newspapers, because these newspapers have consistently bent the rules and across the line, in my opinion, on more than a number of occasions. And obviously, it can't undo the damage. They can't undo the damage that they have told, but they could potentially stop these newspapers causing further damage to potentially other civilians and other those in the future. And I think that's really important, to send the message to these newspapers to say that you can't keep doing what you're doing and being allowed to get away with it. And I think that's really important. I think it's really important that that's highlighted, guys. So I really hope that they really do have the law they're really thrown under the bus, these newspapers, all of them, for their actions, guys. I really hope so. So let's hope it stays that way. So I'm just going to take a moment to recover my voice, guys, while we get some very important broken news. I won't be able to listen to it this time around because I have to put on the headphones, and I'm not going to risk knocking my camera. So I hope you guys enjoy this.
Welcome to Broken News. New research has shown that men who drive large SUVs or enormous American pickup trucks have massive throbbing cocks. Scientists have been studying what's known as the wank panzer effect. Our reporter has more.
For years, men who pootle around residential areas in massive four-wheel drives have been accused of compensating for something. But researchers say there's strong evidence that each one of these men has impressively large, veiny and perpetually tumescent wangs. It had been previously thought that those who owned unnecessarily large vehicles had sad grey button knobs like little cashew nuts, with miniature, brown, empty, crinkly walnut ball bags. But there is, according to this report, a direct and linear correlation between the size of the vehicle being driven and the size of the driver's glistening, hefty and leaden meat obelisk. The report authors say that whether the vehicles are being used as intended in difficult off-road conditions or being used to crawl at 7 miles an hour down the B6157 at rush hour, you can be sure the driver has a hulking single-barrel pump-action yoghurt rifle with monumentally capacious bollocks. The findings claim that if a chap doesn't drive an oversized vehicle with enough torque to pull a house down, he may well have a twig and berries that barely registers on the quantum scale, laughably small apple pit balls and an almost indistinguishable Lilliputian micropenis or nano-nubbin. But a fella popping to Lidl for a £3 bottle of wine in a Ford F-150 Raptor with 700 horsepower will likely be the proud owner of a bulky beef trunk and full sonorous balls positively gurgling with fizzy man fat. Back to you.
Bob, thank you. Well, in a statement just in, the people behind this study said, Our report has now proven that a male driving around a town centre in anything other than a vehicle designed for tactical deployment on the battlefield will statistically have a dick like a baby's winky on a cold day. But males using a 4.4 litre twin-turbo V8 Range Rover Sport to travel less than half a mile to do the school run will have a flabberjacker with at least 150% larger lob than average and be in the 95th percentile or above on the throbidity scale. What a lovely story. That's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
I did manage to hear a little bit of it, to be fair, guys. But yeah, make sure you subscribe to Larry and Paul. Check out the video, watch the video separately, and give them a like. All that good stuff, share, and all that stuff, guys. It's really, really helpful to them. But I hope you enjoyed that broken little news, breaking things up a little bit here for you guys. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to be looking into the COVID inquiry a little bit here, guys. More on the COVID inquiry. So this one is from the Independent, guys. Top civil servant foul mouth attack on lying Matt Hancock at the COVID inquiry. The inquiry also saw a message from Lord Sidwell to Simon Case saying Matt Hancock was far up Boris Johnson's A3. Wonder what he meant by that, guys. I'll let you guys figure that out. I'll just say that things are not looking good for the former Home Secretary. He really isn't looking that good, is he? So Britain's top civil servant launched a savage attack on Matt Hancock during the pandemic, telling Boris Johnson to sack the lying Health Secretary to save lives and protect the NHS. The COVID inquiry heard on Wednesday. The former Cabinet Secretary Mark Sidwell said he made the suggestion as a joke in a WhatsApp message to the then number 10 Permanent Secretary Simon Case, confirming the exchange on Wednesday. Lord Sidwell said he was using gallows humour, but said he had a conversation with Mr Johnson about the need to get rid of Mr Hancock, who was seen by many officials through the pandemic as dishonest. In another message to Mr Case revealed by the inquiry, Lord Sidwell said Hancock is so far up BJ's his ankles are brown. You can figure out what that word is, guys. And Lord Sidwell told the inquiry Mr Hancock's lack of candour was clearly damaging to Britain's handling of the pandemic. I might just have to sneeze in a moment, guys. I'm just warning you now. The ex-Cabinet Secretary lashed out at the now independent MP, over-promising, overconfident, over-assuring demeanour, and said, "Oh, it's passed. It's okay." Normally, I'm not going off topic, guys. I apologise, but normally when I sneeze, when I do a video, and if I do a sneeze, I stop and I start all over again. Obviously, the last thing I want to do is do it with this, guys, with Newsround. And he said officials had to double check whether they're being told by Mr Hancock. In his witness statement, Mr Johnson had denied he received advice from Lord Sidwell to sack Mr Hancock, but Lord Sidwell said Mr Johnson would have been under no illusions as to my view on the Health Secretary's position. On another day of shocking revelations at the inquiry, two of the most senior civil servants during the pandemic said working with Mr Johnson's brutal and useless team was like taming wild animals. Lord Sidwell became the latest official to express serious concerns about Mr Hancock's candour amid his handling of the pandemic. It heard an emergency Cobra meeting was delayed early in the pandemic because of concerns Matt Hancock was trying to make a splash. Lord Sidwell apologised for suggesting Mr Johnson should encourage people to hold chickenpox-style party during the pandemic. The latest revelations are a further blow for Mr Hancock, who has previously come under fire at the COVID probe from top officials accusing him of dishonesty. Him? Dishonesty? Surely not. Last week, Helen Nakanara, one of Britain's most senior civil servants in the pandemic, said Mr Hancock was regularly telling people things that they later discovered were not true, and that number 10 had a lack of confidence in what was happening was actually happening. He was described by Dan Street, former Chief of Staff Dominic Cummings, as a proven liar, problem leaker, and a CUNT. Lord Sidwell told the inquiry on Wednesday that he had conversations with Mr Johnson about whether Mr Hancock was the right person to lead the next phase of the pandemic. He denied having used the word sack, but he later did so in a WhatsApp exchange with Mr Case. Lord Sidwell then confirmed that he said it would be to save lives and protect the NHS. He said it was a private exchange but never expected to be made public, and he was echoing the government's own slogan, stay home and protect the NHS, save lives. The COVID inquiry was then showed WhatsApp exchanges in which Lord Segwell said the Department of Health and Social Care, the DHSC, came under Mr Hancock, did not understand the regulations they authorised. Lord Segwell will lash out at the Department of Health and Social Care for its laissez-faire attitude towards the COVID programmes it was responsible for, and that the stance was arguably the government's biggest failure during the pandemic. The inquiry also revealed that Lord Segwell and Mr Case felt working with Mr Johnson's brutal and useless team was like taming wild animals. Mr Case said that Mr Johnson and his inner circle were basically feral messages shown to the COVID inquiry on Wednesday revealed. The exchange is the latest damning assessment of Mr Johnson's administration that Mr Case made with his predecessor. Lord Segwell complained that Mr Johnson's administration was brutal and useless according to August 2020, the extract from the diary of the former Chief Scientific Advisor Sir Patrick Vallance. The peer said he does not remember saying those words, but added, I can't actually recall what I might have prompted, but I no doubt Sir Patrick's memory. It must have been a moment of acute frustration with something. Yeah, acute frustration, guys. That's for sure. Yeah, because we were definitely frustrated too, weren't we? We the people who had no say on what and everything, and you guys were all over the goddamn place. That's for sure. Mr Case, days before joining Number 10 in May 2020, shared his concerns with the then Cabinet Secretary. Says, honestly, Mark, I don't want to go near these people. If, as part of all this, there are some guarantees about behaviour, I will give it a go for a very short period. Lord Segwell then gave him some advice about how to handle Mr Johnson's former top advisor Dominic Cummings so he can't run interference. Later in June 2020, Mr Case wrote to Lord Segwell, it's like taming wild animals. Nothing in my past experience has prepared me for this madness. The PM and his people chose to surround himself with are basically feral. Lord Segwell replied, I have the bite marks. Earlier in the day, Lord Segwell apologises for suggesting Mr Johnson should encourage people to hold chickenpox party-style parties during the pandemic. Yeah, not very good. The case against Matt Hancock seems to be piling up more and more, guys. It really, really is. It's really quite damning, to say the least. The next story we're going to be is more on the COVID inquiry. But we talked a little bit about Simon Case and this anyway, and some of this already before, guys. And I just think that, you know, how damning is Matt Hancock? You know, he really has got to put on the defence of a lifetime when he comes to that in COVID inquiry. And you just wonder, is he actually going to be able to do it, guys? Is he really going to be able to do it? I don't think he is. I think he's going to struggle very hard to make a case for himself, guys. He really should face criminal charges for his ownership and responsibilities. But we know that that's probably unlikely to happen. But it is damning, to say the least, guys. So one person who didn't really get much of a spotlight during it all was the current Home Secretary at the time, Priti Patel. And this, but there was one story that did take place during that time, which was, with all due respect to her, an impossible situation. So the headline from openDemocracy here was Boris Johnson dismissed the policing of Sarah Everard's vigil as argy bargy. The former PM said he did not want to bash the cops in evidence seen by the COVID inquiry. Now, I've already watched the clip, and I'm going to just put this out there, guys. If you can, please go and support openDemocracy to do some great work. Please subscribe to their YouTube channel as well, if you can, because they've been covering lots of clips from the COVID inquiry. They have volunteer reporters going down there every day, taking in a lot of information as well. So they've been doing some really great stuff in terms of covering the COVID inquiry in general. But I will give a bit of sympathy here in Priti Patel's case here, because at that vigil, they were the police didn't know what they were doing in terms of the premise of the law, because they had a law where they had to keep people separated, but at the same time people wanted to mourn and suffer the loss of what happened to Sarah Everard. You know, that horrible case, and it was really sad for many women, and they just wanted to pay their respects, and they wanted to grieve what happened. And what was quite relieving to hear from the Home Secretary, the former Home Secretary at the time, is that she did say she bashed the police commissioner after the incident, because the way it was handled by the police was pretty out of order. But her defence is that she was in an impossible situation, and I have to say I kind of in agreement with her, because you have these rules for COVID, with the case of, you know, it's there to protect people, and people need to keep distance from each other because we don't want people catching COVID, obviously spreading COVID. Well, that made sense. But on the other hand, is that people want to grieve, and you're going to tell people not to hug each other, you're going to tell people not to hold hands, you're going to tell people to stay apart. Like, how can they police that? It's just a difficult situation, to say the least, guys. I'm not going to play the video just in case I get copyright or anything like that, guys. But if you want to, what I'll do is I'll put a link for the video if you guys want to have a look in the description. But we'll read from this. So, Boris Johnson describes scenes of women being pinned to the ground during the peaceful vigil for Sarah Everard, who was raped and murdered by a serving police officer, as argy bargy. Pretty darn disrespectful, Prime Minister, to call it argy bargy. I don't think that's what the right words I would use. Speaking in a WhatsApp group on the 13th of March 2021, the then Prime Minister Johnson said it would be wrong to publicly speak out against the police behaviour before he knew more about the situation at the vigil for Everard, despite videos and photos circulating of the events. Feels off to weigh in and bash the cops when all I have seen is some footage of argy bargy without knowing what happened, he wrote to a group that included the political secretary Ben Gasagoffi, deputy head of press Jack Doyle, and press secretary Angela Stratton. In the WhatsApp discussion over how politicians should publicly respond to the footage emerging, David Frost, the then Cabinet Office Minister, said it is certainly true that the police are in an impossible position in many ways. Because of the impossibility of enforcing current rules, we certainly should not throw them under a bus. After the kidnapping, rape and murder of Sarah Everard on the 3rd of March 2021 by serving police officer Wayne Couzes, their candlelight vigil was held in London. Some attendees were arrested by the police and physically pushed to the ground. In September 2023, the Met was required to apologise and pay damages to the two women who had been pinned to the ground by police officers. Johnson later said he was deeply concerned by the policing. The evidence was showed to the inquiry today during former Home Secretary Priti Patel's evidence giving. Johnson is expected to give evidence later on the module, which scrutinises political decision making and governance. Patel told the inquiry that when she saw the news of the vigil, she thought it was totally inappropriate policing. But she agreed that the general policing of protests, such as in the case of Black Lives Matter, the BLM protests during the pandemic, have been appropriate, unambiguous and uncomfortable. A bit uncomfortable. Asked whether the balance was struck, Patel said, reflecting back, I do. At the time, it probably felt uncomfortable, quite frankly. She continued, of course, those are difficult challenges, and though it feels uncomfortable, the role of the police is clearly to facilitate and enable those expressions of free speech and expression that the public felt strongly about, Black Lives Matter in particular, in a peaceful and respectful way. Earlier today, Inquiry Chair Heather Halliott criticised the government for some of its Coronavirus Act, calling it bad legislation. Patel also accepted that the laws, which organised from Matt Hancock's Department of Health and Social Care, had been complex and were difficult to understand. Police monitoring group NetPol said in a statement, months after the shocking killing of Sarah Everard, Johnson was still insisting the public should trust in the police. So his casual disregard for police violence against women who demanded more than placards is entirely in character. His arrogance and his lack of empathy for others is now by far from surprising. Yeah, for him to basically say people should back the police after what happened was pretty darn ridiculous and outrageous, to say the least. I mean, it's just like, come on, man. Like, seriously? Like, after that, the way the women were literally handled by the police officers, you're gonna tell people that? Just ridiculously bang out of order, guys, is what it was. Absolutely was. What more to add on it? I mean, like she said, you know, it was an impossible situation for her. You know, the freedom and the rights to protest, the right for free speech, while at the same time trying to stop the spread of coronavirus. It was a difficult situation. So on that front, I can't throw the former Home Secretary under the bus on that, really. Some of you guys may disagree with me because of some of her wordings and her antics as a former Home Secretary. She's not as vile as the current one. That's if the current one, Suella Braverman. That's if she's still going to be Home Secretary by the time you guys watch this. But it was a very difficult situation, to say the least. But the police, you know, they could have handled it a hell of a lot better. Bearing in mind, it was outside as well. It wasn't inside. It wasn't like they were all you know, because the spread is much less as opposed to indoors as it was outdoors as well. So I think that's important to remind people as well. And they didn't really take that into account as well. So this last article here, guys, obviously from one of our favourite news outlets, Byline Times. Guys, make sure if you're out and about today and you happen to see a newspaper with the name Byline Times, make sure you pick up a copy, guys, for me. They do some wonderful work. Support their work, guys. The headline they have here is "Once in a Generation, the plan to fix social care crisis is in crisis after Sunak slashed its budget." Parts of the financial crisis facing social care has been a huge rise in inflation and interest rates following former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng's controversial budget. The kamikaze budget. How could we possibly forget that? Oh, look at these three individuals, guys. We remember these three. One is the Prime Minister. Two of them are troublemakers. Yeah, I know, guys, I know. Let's read into this last one, guys. So Boris Johnson, once in a generation plan to solve the social care crisis is faltering and well behind schedule, according to a new report by the National Audit Office. The 10-year programme launched by the then Prime Minister promised to fix the crisis in 2021, but his successor Rishi Sunak has slashed its budget by 1.1 billion and delayed a central plank of the scheme, which would see nobody having to pay more than $86,000 for residential care. The latter would have cost 3.6 billion and should have started last month, but has been postponed until 2025. The NAO is sceptical about whether it has to be postponed again, with the autumn statement due later this month. The most dramatic change has been more than halving of the 1.74 billion promised to be spent on programming until 2025 to 729 million pounds. Some 171 million is being returned to the Treasury because of the delay in introducing the charging schemes, and the rest being reallocated to other Department of Health schemes that are in trouble. This includes extra money to pay for people who cannot be discharged from hospital because of the lack of care places, more people for urgent workforce training, and more cash for care home fees. Labour's Dame Meg Hiller MP, chair of the House of Commons Public Accounts Committee, said the Department of Health and Social Care still has a long way to go. It has made some progress, but is largely stalled. With the charging reform delay and wider improvements scaled back, she added, the sector is still struggling with long waiting lists, staffing shortages at both local authorities and providers under significant financial pressure. The DHSC needs a long-term plan to deliver its vision. It must understand if it is on track and whether its activities are actually improving people's lives. The NAO found that the number of people waiting to be assessed for a care home place has risen from 395,000 to 434,000, with those facing 6 months or longer wait doubling to 82,000. There is a huge staff shortage despite a campaign to recruit people from abroad. vacancies have risen 166% from 6,000 in 2021 to 152,000. Jesus, that's a huge amount. Part of the financial crisis facing social care has been the huge rise in inflation and interest rates following the former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng's kamikaze budget, as I like to call it, that spooked the markets under then Prime Minister Liz Truss's short-term government. This led to higher costs for local councils, according to a report, and slashed the profits of care home providers, who then put up fees to councils and people paying privately. Some councils are so short of cash that they fear they cannot keep their statutory duty to provide care places for the most vulnerable, including the disabled and people with mental illness. The spokesperson for the Department of Health and Social Care said it's investing up to £700 million over this year to make major improvements to the adult social care system, including £42.6 million to support innovation in care and increasing the disabled facilities grant by £50 million. Additionally, we've made up £8.1 billion available to help local authorities tackle waiting lists, low fee rates and workforce pressures. The £570 million which to help local authorities improve adult social care provision, in particular by boosting the workforce, they added. But it's here, guys. He slashed the budget by 1.1 billion. I mean, hello, austerity. Like you're promising to fix the crisis, and then the next Prime Minister comes in and just completely ignores it and slashes the budget. It's just outrageous. They really don't care about social care. No, that completely heartless is what these people are, guys. They are completely and totally heartless is what they are. And I hope Labour have a plan for social care, because they need one. That is for sure, because social care is in grave need of help. And it'll be interesting to see how they approach it, because now we talk about the NHS and the crisis that it's in. There's lots of other issues as well, but social care needs help too, guys. And I'm glad that Byline Times had this article highlighting the crisis that it's in. And I'm concerned about those within it, whether it's those in care, the workers behind it. It's a vital importance that it's maintained and well looked after, guys. And on that, guys, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who's watched up to this point. What did you make of some of the stories and articles that we had today? Let me know down in the comments section what you guys think of some of the news outlets that we've had today. I do apologise for not being being the best of weather, but I hope I wasn't too much of a distraction, so you guys could actually read and hear what we were talking about today. So let me know what you guys think. Hit the like button if you can. Share across social media. Hit that bell notification icon and you'll be notified of when I go live. And if you're not subscribed already, please feel free to subscribe and check out some of my other exclusive content on Rumble or on Patreon as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.